In November of 2022, two women with noticeably large hair were arrested at two different airports in Colombia for allegedly stashing tubes of cocaine in their extensions. A 30-year-old suspect was stopped while passing through a security area at Alfonso Bonilla Aragon International Airport in Cali, where she was due to catch a flight to Madrid. She became suspiciously upset while trying to answer basic questions and was taken into a private room for a more thorough search. Security agents found 900 grams of cocaine sewn into her hair and another 200 grams in a more traditional stash spot that some female smugglers are known to use, amounting to more than 2 pounds of the drug. The second woman, who was also bound for Madrid, was intercepted at Jose Maria Cordoba International Airport in Medellin. She was carrying nearly 2 pounds of cocaine in the same places as the other woman. Although it's unclear whether the two incidents were related, it seems likely that this was a new method that drug cartels were using in their efforts to smuggle drugs into Europe. Needless to say, these shipments were stopped in their tracks and the women's travel plans were put on hold while they were dealt with newfound legal issues. Number 13. Papier-mâché pregnancy. In November of 2019, police stopped a couple near the Chilean border in Argentina's Valle de Uco region after finding 2 bricks of marijuana in a male traveler's duffel bag. Officers searched his seemingly pregnant female companion and discovered that her baby bump was fake. Inside the fake belly, which was made from a papier-mâché-like paste, police found 15 more bricks of marijuana totaling nearly 9 pounds. Some news reports stated that the pair were headed to the city of Caleta Olivia, located roughly 1,100 miles away on Argentina's Atlantic coast. Other articles speculated that the couple was on their way to a village called Santa Oliva in the Patagonia region. Either way, the suspects had no choice but to put their travel plans on hold while they were taken into custody. While the outcome of the case is unclear, another couple was accused more recently of using a similar method to transport drugs. In May of 2023, deputies in Anderson County, South Carolina, pulled over a vehicle that was seen driving erratically along Interstate 85. The driver, Anthony Miller, and his noticeably pregnant passenger, Sameka Mitchum, allegedly acted nervous during the traffic stop, giving police conflicting information regarding Mitchum's due date and where they were headed that day. An officer found marijuana while searching the car, at which point Mitchum took off running. As she attempted to flee the scene, packages of cocaine fell out of her stomach. Officers soon discovered that she was wearing a rubber belly that was taped to her midsection. It reportedly contained 3 pounds of the drug, leading to the arrests of her and Miller. The suspects are free on bond, while each facing a charge of trafficking cocaine in excess of 400 grams. Number 12. Valerie Rivas. One evening in February of 2018, U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents spotted a woman hiding among some sand dunes on Padre Island National Seashore in Texas. Later identified as Brownsville police officer Valerie Rivas, she allegedly told the agency was searching for her boyfriend of 12 years, Alfredo Salazar Hernandez. According to some news reports, Salazar Hernandez had just been smuggled into the United States and Rivas planned to pick him up and drive him north. Another man, who was with Rivas at the time, was also identified as an undocumented migrant named Jose Raul Perez. He told the authorities that he had paid a man $1,500 to smuggle him across the border from Mexico. Perez and Salazar Hernandez had been traveling in the same group of 7, but the rest of the group, including Salazar Hernandez, had gone ahead of him, and Salazar Hernandez had failed to call Rivas or arrive at his destination as planned. An arrest report claimed that Rivas freely admitted to knowing her boyfriend was in the country illegally. She also allegedly told police that she attempted to hide among the sand dunes when she noticed a helicopter overhead because she knew that it was against the law to help smuggle people into the US. Rivas was charged with human smuggling and lost her gun and badge, but the situation wasn't exactly as it seemed. While it's true that Salazar Hernandez was in the country illegally and Rivas was in a relationship with him, she hadn't broken any laws by dating an undocumented migrant. She was out looking for Salazar Hernandez because she was worried when he went missing, not because she had anything to do with facilitating his movement across the border, as it turned out. Salazar Hernandez had been picked up by Border Patrol agents earlier that day. The case against Rivas was dropped, and she was reinstated as a police officer. Unfortunately, the good news came with the bad news that Salazar Hernandez was being deported. Number 11. Brazilian woman's watermelon baby. Acting on a tip about a narcotics case in late 2020, military police in the Brazilian state of Sao Paulo stopped a Rio de Janeiro-bound bus and searched a woman who appeared to be pregnant. Officers were shocked to discover that her baby bump was a hollowed-out watermelon containing 4 bricks of cocaine paste, totaling 4.5 pounds of the drug. The woman was taken to a police station in the municipality of Guara by a police motorcycle squad. During questioning, she confessed to picking up the drug shipment in Paraguay, which is commonly used by Brazilian gangs as a waypoint for importing cocaine from other countries. She was reportedly paid 500 reais, or around $100, to smuggle the drugs. In a Facebook post featuring a photo of the phony baby bump, the police described the accused trafficker as having creativity without limit for her unusual scheme. The woman was arrested for her alleged crimes, but the outcome of the case is unclear. Number 10. Maurílio Garcia Torres and Ivania Riestra Garcia. In April of 2022, Florida Highway Patrol officers pulled over a Jeep Grand Cherokee in Hernando County for having a fraudulent Arizona license plate. The vehicle was occupied by 33-year-old Maurílio Garcia Torres and 19-year-old Ivania Riestra Garcia, who were allegedly in the United States illegally from Mexico, and the driver was unlicensed. During the traffic stop, a police canine alerted to the possible presence of contraband. A subsequent search of the Jeep turned up 5.5 pounds of heroin valued at nearly $700,000. Garcia Torres and Riestra Garcia were booked into custody on suspicion of heroin trafficking, distribution of heroin, and possession of a vehicle for drug trafficking. Records show that Garcia Torres is serving a 15-year state prison sentence for various charges, including drug trafficking and unlawful use of a two-way communication device. Immigration authorities have placed a detainer on him, which means that they've identified probable cause to deport him after he serves his time. While this doesn't guarantee that Garcia Torres will be kicked out of the country, he'll have to prove a valid case for staying in the US if he wants to avoid being sent back to Mexico. Riestra Garcia does not appear to be serving time in custody, indicating that she was most likely deported. Number 9. iPhone Under Armour. In January of 2015, a Chinese man with a history of run-ins with border authorities was caught trying to smuggle nearly 100 iPhones onto the mainland from Hong Kong. Inspectors at the Fuxian crossing in Shenzhen became suspicious when they noticed that the man was walking like he was carrying a lot of weight, despite having only 2 shopping bags worth of belongings with him. Officials found nothing unusual in the bags, which only furthered their suspicions. They had the man pass through a metal detector, and sure enough, he set off the alarm. While searching the suspect, customs agents found dozens of iPhone 6 and iPhone 5S models strapped to his chest, thighs, crotch, and abdomen. The smuggler's arrest marked the latest in a series of similar busts following the release of the iPhone 6, which was extremely popular in China. Due to import taxes, the phone was nearly $200 more expensive on the mainland than in Hong Kong, making it a hot commodity among those looking to profit from the sale of illicit goods. While the suspect's smuggling method may seem unique, he's not the only person to try it. Just 2 months later, a 30-year-old known smuggler named Chan Shi was stopped at an airport in Shenzhen for walking strangely as he headed toward the exit for travelers with no goods to declare. He looked like he was struggling, so an agent asked him if he was okay. Shi claimed he had fallen and hurt his back, but customs officials remained suspicious, so they had him pass through a metal detector. When the alarm went off, he blamed a gold bracelet he was wearing, but the agents were unconvinced and continued their search. They found 146 iPhones strapped to Shi's midsection and calves, and given his history, they weren't surprised by the discovery. It was Shi's 5th smuggling arrest since 2011, and it wasn't the first time he was caught with electronics strapped to his body. Between all of his arrests, he had tried sneaking 511 phones across the border, marking the record for the highest number of iPhones a single person had been caught trying to smuggle into China. In a statement following Shi's arrest, a customs spokesperson said he needs to think of a new way of doing it, as it is getting a bit obvious. Number 8. Memory card smugglers. In February 2016, an unidentified traveler was stopped and searched at a border checkpoint while crossing from Hong Kong onto the Chinese mainland. Customs agents found an estimated 9,000 cell phone memory cards worth over $12,500 taped tightly to his legs. Instead of accepting that he had been caught red-handed and that his smuggling mission had failed, the man offered guards a nearly $6,300 bribe in exchange for letting him into Shenzhen, but the agents refused, and the suspect was taken into custody. Earlier that day, at the same border checkpoint, an elderly woman in her 80s was caught trying to smuggle 10,000 memory cards into Shenzhen. Agents searched her after they noticed her walking strangely and found the goods strapped to her waist and legs. Number 7. Anastasia Kotvitska. When Russia invaded Ukraine in February 2022, civilians fled the country en masse. In late March, about a month after the war began, the glamorous wife of former Ukrainian member of parliament and uranium tycoon Igor Kotvitsky was reportedly caught trying to smuggle tens of millions of dollars into neighboring Hungary, accompanied by her mother and 2 Hungarian men. Anastasia Kotvitska crossed the border on foot at a refugee checkpoint with several suitcases. She allegedly failed to declare any goods before customs officials searched her luggage and found that it was filled with euros and US currency, amounting to more than $28 million. The discovery prompted an investigation into the suspiciously large amount of cash. It also sparked demands for an investigation into the conduct of Ukrainian border agents who were suspected of turning a blind eye to large amounts of money that had been leaving the country since the war's onset. The Kotvitska incident was exposed in a Facebook post by a businessman from Kiev named Syar Kushatov, who accused customs officials of taking bribes in exchange for allowing people to take cash out of Ukraine. Kushatov claimed that this also happens in other countries and that the names of border agents who are willing to take bribes are well known among the elite few who have money that they need to smuggle from one place to another. Igor Kotvitsky denied the claims that his wife had been caught trying to smuggle cash or that she was detained, claiming that all the couple's money was in Ukrainian banks. According to Kushatov, however, the money was declared after an hours-long argument between Kotvitska and border agents. Authorities have remained tight-lipped about the incident, and the story quickly fell off the media's radar. Number 6. Babacar and Matako Drame. In September of 2017, a 42-year-old airline worker named Babacar Drame allegedly tried to pass through an employee security checkpoint at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport with a suitcase filled with over $140,000 in cash. According to federal investigators, he offered the security agent who discovered the money an $8,000 bribe in exchange for letting him through. but the agent turned down the offer and called law enforcement instead, leading to Drameer's arrest and marking the beginning of a world of legal problems. In August 2018, Babacar and his wife, Matako Drameer, were indicted on federal charges of conspiracy to operate an unlicensed money-transmitting business and entering an aircraft and airport area in violation of security requirements. Babacar was also charged with bribery for trying to pay the agent to let him through security. According to prosecutors, the couple routinely abused Babacar's status as an airline employee by sneaking large amounts of cash through employee security checkpoints where they were subjected to less thorough screenings than typical travelers. Between November 2016 and September 2017, the Drameers took over 50 flights from the country's busiest airport in Atlanta to California, where they delivered the undeclared funds. Records show that Babacar served a brief prison sentence and was released in 2022, while the outcome of Matako's case is unclear. Number 5. Amy Hatfield. In October of 2019, mental health nursing assistant Amy Hatfield was arrested upon arriving at her job at HM Prison Lindholm in South Yorkshire, England. When confronted with allegations of smuggling, she admitted to having some stuff on her. In her possession, officers found MDMA, bags of ketamine, prescription drugs, vials of testosterone, steroids, tobacco, cell phones, cell phone accessories, and both liquid and paper forms of the synthetic marijuana drug known as spice. Prison experts estimated the value of the stash at more than $1.25 million. Hatfield's arrest prompted a 4-year investigation which uncovered the existence of Britain's largest ever prison smuggling ring. The operation consisted of at least 17 co-conspirators, including 6 prisoners and several of their family members and friends. Hatfield was recruited into the ring by her married inmate boyfriend, Joseph Whittingham, who worked with convicted murderer Anthony Campbell to distribute the contraband throughout the prison. Whittingham's father, Paul, and his wife, Lucy, were also accused of participating in the smuggling operation. Cell searches turned up spice papers, cell phones, knives that were ordered with plans to assault a guard, and notes containing information for several bank accounts. The knives were allegedly purchased by Campbell's mum and smuggled into the prison by Hatfield, who grew to play a leading role in the operation. In addition to its smuggling activities, the group had members who were tasked with laundering the proceeds from the illicit sales of the contraband. All 17 defendants were convicted of crimes related to their role in the conspiracy. In 2023, Hatfield pleaded guilty to conspiracy to supply drugs, conspiracy to convey drugs and phones into prison, conveying knives into prison, and money laundering. She was sentenced to over 10 years in prison. The remaining defendants received sentences ranging from supervision to more than 11 years in prison. The longest prison terms were given to Hatfield's inmate lover, Joseph Whittingham, who was sentenced to 11 years and 4 months, and Anthony Campbell, who received an 11-year sentence. Number 4. Corruption at Rikers Island. In April of 2024, 5 former jail guards and 1 inmate were arrested on suspicion of smuggling contraband into New York City's infamous Rikers Island in exchange for bribes. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, 30-year-old former corrections officer Stephanie Davila and former detainee Christopher Francisco bribed another guard to smuggle fentanyl, K2, marijuana, cigarettes, and cell phones into the jail during the summer of 2021. Davila and Francisco were each charged with conspiracy to commit bribery, conspiracy to commit honest services wire fraud, and conspiracy to distribute narcotics and controlled substances. 27-year-old former corrections officer Carlos Rivera is accused of sneaking cell phones, oxycodone, marijuana, and other drugs into the jail's North Infirmary Command in over a 3-month period starting in December 2021. He was charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and conspiracy to distribute narcotics and controlled substances. 30-year-old Chantal de los Santos, who also worked as a corrections officer, allegedly smuggled contraband into the Anna M. Cross Center, which houses male inmates, between March and June of 2022. According to prosecutors, de los Santos bribed former program counselor Shaniqua Washington to give sheets of paper soaked in an unknown substance to an inmate she was in a romantic relationship with, who sold the papers to other prisoners. Washington allegedly received more than $10,000 in payments for the illicit contraband. De los Santos is also accused of bribing ex-contractor Kenneth Webster to smuggle cigarettes, alcohol, cell phones, tablets, and drug-soaked papers to 2 inmates. Authorities charged de los Santos with conspiracy to commit bribery and 2 counts of conspiracy to commit honest services wire fraud. Washington and Webster are facing similar charges. These ongoing cases mark the latest in a seemingly endless series of scandals that plague Rikers, which is slated to close by the end of the decade due to continuous problems with corruption, violence, understaffing, use of force, and mistreatment toward inmates. For now, authorities are doing what they can to improve conditions at the notorious jail complex, including by cracking down on crooked employees. Number 3. Posterior precious metals. In October of 2020, airport security agents at Kannur Airport in Kerala, India, noticed a man walking strangely as he came in off a Go Air flight from Dubai. They searched him and discovered 2 pounds of gold bullion hidden in his rectum. The man had stashed the precious metal, which was valued at roughly $60,000, in an attempt to avoid paying an 18% tax to bring it into the country. Another passenger from the same flight was reportedly caught with 3 pounds of undeclared gold in their possession, but agents declined to specify how it was hidden. Gold smuggling is common, and while it's not every day that someone is caught hiding it in their rear cavity, it's known to happen from time to time. In September of 2021, a traveler named Mohammed Sharif allegedly tried sneaking nearly 2 pounds of gold paste into Manipur, India's Imphal airport, using the highly uncomfortable stashing method. Much like the more recent bum-stuffing smuggler, Sharif was seen walking in an unusual manner, catching the attention of security guards. They administered an X-ray which confirmed their suspicions that something unnatural was going on inside Sharif's body, and the discovery of the $56,000 stash followed. This was the 3rd known instance that year alone of someone trying to smuggle gold in their rectum in India. Airport workers had an even busier year in 2022, with customs and security agents seizing several crates full of anally smuggled gold. In the month of April alone, one man's glimmering stash of gold granules was found to be 99.5% pure, while another traveler was caught hiding nearly $39,000 worth of gold in his rectum and his toupee. By now, security workers have learned to look out for strange hairstyles and people who are walking funny, making these strategies far less effective than they used to be. Today's topic was requested by River Parish. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Emma Johnson. While working as a senior officer at HM Prison Sudbury in Derbyshire, England in 2020, 25-year-old Emma Johnson fell in love with a 28-year-old inmate named Marcus Solomon. She smuggled a cell phone into the prison so they could communicate in secret, and warned Solomon ahead of cell searches so he could make sure he didn't get caught with it. Johnson also smuggled cell phones into the facility for Solomon to sell to other inmates. The pair reportedly made thousands of dollars from the illicit sales. Their love affair and business operation were interrupted when Solomon was transferred to another prison due to concerns over the excessive amounts of time that he and Johnson were spending together. after Solomon was relocated, Johnson's superiors developed new concerns over the amount of time she was spending with another inmate. During a search of his cell, prison staff members found a cell phone with Johnson's number in the contacts. Following the discovery, investigators seized Johnson's cell phone. They discovered extensive communication between her and Solomon, which made it clear that the two were not only romantically involved, but that they were conspiring to smuggle and sell contraband cell phones. During their conversations, Johnson mentioned picking up several iPhones, and the clandestine couple excitedly discussed how much money they were making. Financial records reportedly corroborated the details of these talks. Johnson lost her job in light of the investigation and was subsequently arrested for her alleged role in the phone selling operation. Solomon was also charged, and both defendants admitted to conspiracy to convey mobile phones into prison. Johnson also admitted to a money laundering charge. During her sentencing hearing, her defense attorney claimed that she had been blinded by her feelings for Solomon and that it caused her to fail to consider the consequences of her actions. But the judge refused to consider this as a mitigating factor and sentenced Johnson to 15 months in prison, while Solomon received a 13-month sentence. Smuggling is already bad enough, but imagine if it was your jabber that puts you in jail. We've got 7 chatterboxes whose talking landed them in jail, lined up for you next after number 1, so stay tuned. Number 1. Sarah Elizabeth Russell. In 2018, a prison mailroom worker at the James V. Allred unit in Wichita Falls, Texas, noticed a suspicious bulge in an envelope. The mail was addressed to inmate Jason Aaron Burkett, who's serving a life sentence for a double murder he committed in 2001. Inside the envelope, the employee found a packet filled with powdered methamphetamine and a card containing handwritten tips on how to package the drug, including an instruction to tape the outside edges of the parcel shut. Fingerprints on the package were traced to 29-year-old Sarah Elizabeth Russell of Katy, Texas. According to investigators, Burkett admitted that he had written the instructions on the card and mailed it to Russell, but he denied asking the woman to send him drugs. Russell was arrested and held on $10,000 bond for 1 count of prohibited substance in a correctional facility. While the outcome of the case is unclear, records show that she is not currently serving time in the state prison system. On October 3rd of 2017, an armed robber entered the KFC restaurant on Perkins Road in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. According to the resulting arrest warrant, the suspect was wearing all black clothes and a ski mask over his face and was holding a firearm and a hammer. He pointed the weapon at one of the employees' heads, then cocked back the hammer as though poised to strike and demanded money. Despite the robber's effort to disguise himself, he was almost immediately recognized by restaurant workers as Cleveland Willis. The 28-year-old had reportedly worked at the KFC for several months and thus was known by the 2 employees on duty that night. One of the workers even asked the suspect, "Cleveland, is that you?" To which the man allegedly replied, "No, it's not me." Both cash registers were opened and the robber made off with roughly $600. He then fled the scene in a Nissan Altima, the same car Willis used to drive to work. In the aftermath, the KFC employees spoke with detectives, stating that they'd recognized their former co-worker because of his voice and the features of his face that were visible through the holes in the mask. About a week and a half later, the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office announced that Willis had been taken into custody in connection with the armed robbery. Number 6. Aaron Burrell, Yvonne Thyberg, and Marvin Myers. 3 suspects broke into a house in Roswell, New Mexico in late September of 2014 after allegedly stealing a television. The burglars hopped in a getaway car and sped off. As they were making their escape, one of the suspects accidentally pocket-dialed 911. Emergency dispatchers listened as the trio gloated about their crime, unaware that their conversation was being monitored and recorded. One of them could be heard saying, "I know we should have gotten a lot more, But you know what? My only thing is that we got away safe, clean. According to the police, the Bon Jovi song, Wanted Dead or Alive, started playing at one point during the call. The inadvertent confession continued for about 45 minutes, during which the suspects mentioned the address of the home they'd burglarized. Officers were sent to the residence, and the homeowner confirmed that the place had been robbed. Investigators were able to trace the unwitting 911 call to a phone belonging to 37-year-old Aaron Burrell. The latter was arrested in early October but denied any involvement in the crime. He claimed that his phone had been picking up a loud conversation taking place in a vehicle adjacent to his. Nevertheless, he was charged with residential burglary, conspiracy to commit residential burglary, and receiving or disposing of stolen property. Burrell's two accomplices were identified as Yvonne Thyberg and Marvin Myers. At one point during the accidental 911 call, Thyberg reportedly revealed that the burglarized home belonged to one of her relatives. Both she and Myers likewise faced burglary charges following their arrest. Number 5. Jacqueline Williams. On October the 30th of 2012, British Transport Police were made aware of a video posted to YouTube in which a woman hurled racial obscenities at a group of black passengers on board a train in Woolwich. The belligerent woman was identified as 47-year-old Jacqueline Williams from Slade Green, Kent. In the viral 40-second clip, Williams was recorded telling the group, go home where you belong. You might have been born here, but I bet your grandparents and your great-grandparents weren't." She then added, "If you belonged here, you'd be pink-skinned, blonde-haired, blue eyes, green eyes." As Williams stepped off the train at Abbey Wood, she continued verbally abusing a 21-year-old NHS worker who was looking after a lady with learning disabilities. Williams allegedly told the young woman that she walked like a monkey. On the night of October the 30th, Williams was taken into police custody, charged with a racially aggravated public offense. She was due to appear in Bexley Magistrates Court on November the 9th of 2012. No further updates were provided in the immediate aftermath. Number 4. David McCarthy. In August of 2008, a hit-and-run accident near a sports bar in Joliet, Illinois, claimed the life of a 20-year-old University of Illinois student. Another motorist watched the car responsible for the crash activate its brake lights, swerve, then take off down the road. The witness subsequently came upon the lifeless body of the hit-and-run victim, Melissa Leck. The latter had reportedly spent the day drinking at a Chicago White Sox baseball game. At the time of the crash, she was walking in the 2800 block of McDonough Street on her way home after being denied admittance to a local bar because she was underage. The case went unsolved until one day in February of 2012 when Leck's sister, Michelle, heard her doorbell ring. She opened the front door to find a man in his late 20s standing outside. The stranger proceeded to give an unprompted confession claiming he'd been the driver who struck and killed Leck 4 years earlier. The man, identified as Naperville resident David McCarthy, told the victim's family he was trying to find his way back to Interstate 55 when he accidentally ran her over and fled the scene. Consequently, McCarthy was charged with hit and run and leaving the scene of an accident involving injury or death. In June of 2014, however, it was reported that the charges against him had been dropped. Psychologists for both the defense and prosecution determined that McCarthy made a false confession because of a mental disorder that caused him to experience delusions. Leck's mother, Maria, maintained her belief that McCarthy was, in fact, guilty of her daughter's killing, despite the charges against him being dismissed. As of the case's most recent updates, the authorities hadn't yet named another suspect. Number 3. Kenneth Montgomery. Police in Mesa, Arizona, were contacted by 27-year-old Albert Liotta on the morning of November the 21st of 2022. The man claimed that he and his mother, 61-year-old Antoinette Liotta, had been shot in the parking lot outside a Hobby Lobby near the area of Greenfield and Baseline Roads. According to local authorities, the two victims were sitting in separate vehicles that were parked next to each other when the shooting unfolded. Emergency crews rushed to the scene and pulled Antoinette out of her vehicle, whereupon she was pronounced dead by paramedics. Albert was taken to the hospital having suffered non-fatal gunshot wounds to both legs. Police officers were able to gather a description of the male suspect and his pickup truck. After speaking with eyewitnesses, about 2 hours later, law enforcement tracked the man down and found him climbing into the bed of a stranger's truck. He was identified as 65-year-old Kenneth Montgomery. Officers searched the man's pickup and stumbled upon a bloody handgun on the dashboard. Montgomery openly admitted to purchasing ammunition shortly before the shooting. He also confessed to going to the Hobby Lobby parking lot in search of the Liottas, thinking they'd been involved in prior criminal activity. The man parked his truck in front of the victims' vehicles and unloaded the clip into them. It was later reported that 10 shell casings were recovered from the scene of the crime. When asked if he'd intended to kill the Liottas, Montgomery said, "Damn right, anybody would have." He also stated that he felt no guilt over the incident. Officers brought Montgomery to the Maricopa County Jail on multiple charges, including second-degree murder and aggravated assault. He was held on a $1 million bond. Number 2. Brian E. Mason. On March the 27th of 2023, Ohio man Brian E. Mason walked right up to an officer outside the Miamisburg Police Department and calmly stated, "I'm here to turn myself in." In jaw-dropping body cam footage, the 58-year-old went on to explain that he'd been showing an old friend how to use his .40 caliber firearm the previous night. At some point, the weapon inadvertently went off, striking Mason's friend in the chest. The man said he'd been running around scared all day after fleeing the house in a panic. The officer subsequently detained Mason, also asking him if his friend needed medical attention. Mason replied, "She's deceased." Later that evening, officers were dispatched to a Miami County home in the 1100 block of North Montgomery County Line Road. After receiving no response at the door, law enforcement made a forced entry. On the floor between the living room and kitchen, they came upon the lifeless body of 57-year-old Michelle L. Elliott, who'd suffered an apparent gunshot wound. Mason was consequently arrested on reckless homicide charges. He was already known to Miamisburg police because of a 2012 case in which he'd been convicted of attempted cultivation of marijuana. As a result of that ruling, Mason had his concealed carry license revoked and wasn't allowed to be in possession of the gun that killed Elliott. Therefore, he was also charged with a firearm specification and having a weapon while under a disability. Mason was ultimately found guilty by a county jury. In August of 2023, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison for the crime. Number 1. David Jungerman. In October of 2017, Missouri attorney Tom Pickett was gunned down on the front steps of his Kansas City home. The shooting occurred not long after Pickett won a multi-million-dollar lawsuit on behalf of one of his clients. The legal matter stemmed from an incident in which an elderly man by the name of David Jungerman fired a gun at Pickett's client, as well as 3 others. 80-year-old Jungerman reportedly thought the 4 men were stealing copper from his property. He was also served property liens shortly before Pickett was killed. Weeks later, the murder still yet to be solved, Jungerman went to a hearing in Vernon County Court. The man later left the courthouse without turning off the audio recorder he'd been using. In a recording unearthed during a search of Jungerman's home and business, he could be heard telling someone that he murdered that son of a, in reference to Pickett. In March of 2018, the baby furniture store owner allegedly told one of his employees that he'd killed the lawyer with a gun and gotten away with it because the lawyer stole his money. On March the 8th, Jungerman was involved in yet another shooting incident. He fired at a man whom he believed had stolen 780 pounds of iron pipe from him. He was subsequently held in custody without bond. Around this time, investigators were also considering him the prime suspect in Pickett's killing. Law enforcement's suspicions were corroborated by the damning audio recording found in his house, as well as the testimony of his employees. Jungerman was charged with first-degree murder, of which he was found guilty in September of 2022. The following year, a group of doctors from the Missouri Department of Mental Health ruled the man incompetent before he could be sentenced. While still awaiting punishment for the crime, Jungerman died in state custody on the morning of September the 25th of 2023. Thanks for watching. If a stranger offered you $5 million to try and smuggle a 5x5-inch package through airport security without knowing what the contents are, would you do it? Let us know in the comments section below.